Great skills again by him. Oh, marvellous goal by Lautner.
Welcome to the Rangers Journal.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Rangers Journal. My name is Billy Rankin. I'm taking the pod for this evening. A little bit of a title to get people's interested in the decline of James Tavernier. We're seeing things with our eyes, but we're going to have a wee look at the stats and see if what we're seeing with our eyes actually plays out on the back end stuff on the stat side of things. So I'm joined by two guests this evening. Dino's having trouble connecting, so we'll leave him for the second. But Ryan, how are you doing, mate?
I'm doing fine, buddy. Doing fine. Thanks for having me.
Oh, very welcome. And yourself, Graham, how are you?
Yeah, good, Billy. Can't complain. Thanks for having us on. Looking forward to the discussion points tonight. I'm sure it will stimulate some debate between us and MD watching and commenting.
Well, this certainly, I don't want this to be a show or give you the wrong impression that this is a let's give Tav an extra season or let's not give Tav. There's nothing to do with it. We're just going to reflect on James Tavernier's career with the Rangers and we'll see how the stats add up and we'll see if what we're seeing with our eyes actually is what the stats are telling us. I'm going to start with some, not breaking news, just news from the press conference today, Ryan. I don't know if you've seen that Rule has been given Manager of the Month for January.
Yeah, and rightly so. 4 victories throughout the month of January and some really good important victories and some markers put down as well towards the end of the season. So rightly so. I don't think there'll be any other candidates certainly for it.
No, I don't think so. Graham, did you see that yourself?
I did, yeah. I think well deserved. Fine month that we've had, really, and it's put us right back into contention with the results he got in January. So, no, very, very well deserved. Credit to what he's done, and hopefully continues to do.
That is the case, putting us back in contention. I mean, he mentioned it himself in the press conference, Ryan, that when he came in, that we were far away, and now we've managed to catch up a lot of points. We've got a week now with 2 important games to try and catch up again, and then there is the proverbial touch wood. There is the chance that we can be top of the league by the weekend, by the end of the weekend. Yeah,
and you pinch yourself almost with it that it's happened. That the calamity of the Russell Martin appointment, the Thelwell and the Stewart. It's you couldn't believe the situation we're in just now. And it's a testament to Darren Rule and his staff what they've managed to achieve. He's brought us round and we're a completely different football team. You look at Ibrox coming up on Sunday, the game's a sellout. You've got people coming from all sorts of places asking for tickets that you maybe haven't heard of from quite a while, asking you if you can help me for tickets. Literally months ago, you couldn't give your tickets away for Ibrox. Nobody wanted them. You were asking people to go for you as a favourite to put your ticket through the turnstile so that you didn't miss out on your MyJers points. But this is just an example to the board of this is what can happen. If you build a successful club and you build a successful football team in the park, it will sell out. And when they're talking about raising the capacity and make the stadium bigger, this is the reason why. Because if you put a successful football team in the park, people will want to come and see it.
Graham, I remember being offered hospitality and the prices for it, back 4 months ago were ridiculous. You wouldn't get that now again, but they were struggling so much to even sell hospitality packages. As Brian's saying, fans weren't turning up, but it's a world of difference now, and I think fully deserved it. Rule gets the Manager of the Month for January.
Absolutely. Even when you look around the stadium not being particularly full some games in previous months. I know there was a few games that I couldn't get to, and trying to give my season ticket away was, you almost felt the pain. Somebody go, come on, please go and take this for us. Just the whole turnaround and the feel-good factor that's about the club's been incredible since the manager came in. It's taken a bit of time and it's not happened overnight, and it's built up gradually, step by step. But no, we're in a really strong position where win every game of football. That's what we need to do. Win every game of football. That's what you need to be at Rangers, and that's what we need to do to get this league championship.
Yeah, man. Another new one, Player of the Month. Graham deserved as well. Or was any other candidates you might have had in mind?
I think he's the standout from our perspective, not just for what he's done at the back. He's been really solid at the back. And he was probably a player I was slightly worried about, probably back in October time. But he's really, since he's been brought into the team, he's played well. He's scoring goals. He's a threat attacking. So there's not only that defensive cover that he gives us, he's really solid going forward and these set pieces as well. I think he's still got a bit of development to do to become that all-round player that we're looking for at centre-back. But he's really made he's made that centre back position probably his at this point, arguably alongside Suter. So really pleased with how he's come on. I actually thought for a while during the season he might need to go out on loan in January to get some game times, but now he's been given a run. There's been no need for that. And then ultimately, I think we've not brought somebody in at centre back because of how good he's been. So yeah, well deserved, and I think there's more to come from him.
Good news also, Ryan, came out of the press conference today that the only injury concern tomorrow is Max Aarons. So I don't think Max Aarons would have been involved in the starting lineup anyway. So a full squad to choose from. Chamiti being available again gives the manager a headache up front.
Yeah, this is the difficult thing now. And listen, it's a great headache to have. It's good. I mean, Sterling getting through the game on Saturday. John Suter as well. There's obviously concerns over there, ability and durability on that side of things. So great to see that, the guys are kind of coming through, and he's starting to have difficulty. Competition for places raises standards, and hopefully translate into wins and trophies at the end of the season there. But I'm looking forward. I don't know if there's any word about Conor Barron coming back. I think that's probably the next milestone as far as the return's concerned. I think there was talk of him. Was it as far away as the end of March, was it, for him? I'm not.
Yeah, it was another wee while. Yeah.
So that's the kind of maybe the only other kind of real notable absentee. Cornelius obviously in the background there, but the jury's actually still out on him anyway, and I think he would struggle to get a place in. Even Big Giga, I thought was good at the weekend as well. I thought he's starting to show a wee bit of composure that he didn't really have in his early months in his Rangers career. I think he's now starting to show his natural ability and starting to basically discover why he brought Ty Brooks in the first place.
Graham, I think the manager's influence on the players has certainly been as Ryan mentions there, Giga a lot more assured and a bit more calm than he was in the beginning of the season. Purely down to Danny Rule or just settling in, do you think?
It's funny because when the first couple of games I seen Giga at the start of the season, I thought he looked solid. Then he seemed to lose his way a little bit. I think give credit to the manager. He's settled us down. He's made us more difficult to play against. We've not lost as many goals. It's a bit like a goalkeeper or a striker that scores goals. When defenders keep clean sheets with a goalkeeper, that starts to breathe confidence. And we get a few clean sheets in. We're looking a lot more solid. Still there's frailties in there and there's the odd error, but I think that comes with confidence, and the manager's installing confidence in this team, and that's what happens when you've got a winning mentality. You go on a run of games and the form's been good, so all the things are really coming together at probably the most critical point of the season for me, so it's all very encouraging.
Yeah, I agree with that. Anyway, I just wanted to start with the pod with just a bit of an update from the press conference today, but we are here to talk about the decline of James Tavernier. Not trying to be dramatic, not trying to say anything that he's a bad player, not trying to say anything really. We just want to look at how he's performed for Rangers over the last 10 years. Now, Ryan, James Tavernier made his Ibrox debut on Saturday the 7th of August 2010. Do you know the opponents?
I should know this. Hibs. Again, I guess.
No. Graham, do you want to make a guess?
I was actually thinking Hibs as well. That was my guess. Must have been a League Cup game or something, was it?
No, that's a trick question. I have used it on the pod before. He came on for Newcastle against Rangers at Ibrox as an 81-minute substitute. And I'm just trying to get the name of the player to come on for the Colaccini substitute appearance. So James Tavernier did play at Ibrox way before 2016 when he signed for us under Mark Warburton. That first season, Ryan, I remember he scored a really good free kick. I think it was against St Mirren, and they did a wee funny dance after it. But again, we were just trying to build a team. We didn't know anything about him at the time. I don't think you would have known anything about him at the time. But what was your impressions when he first came along?
I think it was Alloa, Billy. Was that free kick? I was there. I was at the game actually. Yeah. I was sitting in the Brimley stand right behind it, and it was a magnificent sweeping curl. We had plenty of power in it. It was a type of free kick the two goalkeepers wouldn't even have saved it, and it just kind of showed you early on what his ability would be like for set pieces moving forward. Early on, I'll be honest, he didn't really catch my eye too much. He was obviously still a young man trying to apply his trade in. I kind of remember him thinking he was a little bit like Hutton in his ability to cut him down the line quite a lot. But just for me, it was one of several players at that point in time. There were just pieces of the puzzle that Warburton was trying to create. It was a good pass to the ball. He had an eye of the pass. He was hard working and stuff. But for me at that point, I didn't really seem too much as a standout.
Graham, I wasn't able to get to a lot of the games round about that time purely because where I lived was 7 miles from the main road. So getting back home after games was pretty difficult unless I wanted to drive. But I mean, that's obviously a successful season. Quite, we kind of stroked the league out the park. We got the win over Celtic in the cup semi-final. But your opinion on Tav? I mean, he became important, I think, as more of the season went on.
Yeah, he seemed to settle in and grow throughout that first season. He looked a threat. I think the comparison to Hutton is quite spot on from Ryan. That kind of attacking fullback. But I think at that point, with a lot of flair players in front of him, with guys scoring goals, we were dominating in terms of that league. So there was a lot of pluses in terms of when he came in, we had that creativity in front. So I think he's really settled in and really grown into that Rangers side since he's come on. It's been quite gradual, and then a couple of years later, he just seems to explode onto the scene, and he's a revelation in terms of from an attacking sense.
I'm going to just, I do want to thank Doug. I think Doug is watching very much for the work he did on the graphics. Before the pod started, me and Ryan were having a look at these stats. We're going to pull it up on the screen just to show you that we're probably not going to be able to use them, Doug. Unfortunately, just it's very small on the screen to be able to read. But I'll be able to relay some of these stats back to people watching and people listening as well. In his first season, Ryan, his passing accuracy is 78.4%. We're going to keep a note of a couple of these figures going along to see if there's been any changes. Defensive duels won 66% and aerial duels won 62%. Cross accuracy only 25% back then. I'm hoping that figure goes up as the seasons go along.
Yeah. It's maybe something to do with the strikers we was trying to have. I think the strikers at that point in time, Wycorn was certainly at the club. I'm trying to think about the other strikers that Warburton had in his first season as well, but there certainly wasn't much to hit in the box. The passing accuracy in his first season doesn't surprise me at all, because everything about Warburton, he was trying to present total football. At that point, it was all about basically out passing your opponent, finding ways round, stuff like getting the ball, wide and into the boxes as at the time. But I don't really remember too much about the kind of strikers at that point. I think Wycorn, Joey Gardner rings a bell for me as well back then. So
was that not the season after? I remember he scored against Celtic, did he not?
Aye, so it's that kind of error where you're not thinking about the strikers that we have kind of nowadays, or certainly you didn't have a Morelos, a Kamar Roof or anything like that to hit the box at that point in time.
Graham, I do remember thinking back then the players that Warburton brought in were quite smart. He knew a bit of the best in the business. Frank McParlin, wasn't it? Signed a couple of good players from the English kind of lower leagues, and Tav was certainly one of them. That again, the free kicks helps, but it became like, I don't know if you remember, I mentioned earlier on when he scored that goal, they had a wee dance and it seemed like they were really enjoying playing under Mark Warburton, and certainly in that first season.
Absolutely, they did. And, was Kenny Miller not leading the line that season up front for us? So with that kind of workhorse up there as well. But, it was a season where we expected to do well and do the business, which we did. So, but there was a real feel-good factor initially. The football was probably a lot better than we'd seen in previous years. I think there was a notable increase in what we were seeing on the park. But he absolutely just went about his business quite quietly. Did what he had to do. Wasn't a star by any stretch of the imagination at that point, but he just fitted into that equation quite nicely and just went about his business and done a decent job for us.
Graham, we'll stay with you just to kind of sum up the early kind of Tav, that first season, maybe even the next season, because we know what he grows into and what he becomes captain. And what stood out for me is that he was kind of all over the place, all over the park back then. He wasn't necessarily smart as he became later on, but he was just a pure engine. Very
much so. Very athletic player. His fitness, and if you even look at them, he's hardly ever injured. He's a very robust footballer for us, very reliable in terms of his availability for us over that tenure where he's been with us. So, very much probably quite a good athlete in terms of that term. did the business that he had to do. He began to show his quality, but very dependable without being that superstar. As I kind of said, he was there. He was always available, doing a decent job on the park without catching the eye. So he very much settled into that side. And but like I say, it's the later years where he really came. He made that position his own and became that star that we've seen over certainly latterly in his career with Rangers. Anyway.
Looking at the stats from the earlier seasons, Ryan, I picked out a few noticeable strengths and weaknesses. He's very physical, as I've mentioned. His ball carrying is very good, and his recovery numbers are actually very good as well. Where he is weak in the early years is the kind of sloppy crossing and the sloppy long balls. Is that something you remember?
I'll be honest, no, it's not something I would have pinned on him. It's just obviously he's developing his game and he's trying to recognise where he is as a player. He maybe wasn't signed as a flying fullback at that point, and he's developed himself in. I think, if I remember rightly, there was a lot of calls for us to actually push him up one, and a lot of people actually seen him as a right winger rather than a right back at that point. But no, I wouldn't say he was a serial ball loser, if that makes sense.
It was more. I think it's more his end product with it wasn't always. Again, you mentioned earlier on he didn't always have a great target man to aim for, but his long passing isn't as good in the early seasons as it becomes.
Aye, and maybe that's he's probably at that point. Connor Golson might have came to Ibrox at that point. We all remember that Connor Golson's range of passing was superb for a centre half. So it might just be that he's just passing the ball sideways and say, if you want to do it, you do it, and he just passes it on to the better player, the better person, the man for the job, if you like. So it's it doesn't surprise me that some of his stats when it comes to this is a wee bit kind of wavered.
In the second season, Graham, his accuracy passing actually drops from 78% to 76%, and his long passes from 55% down to 51%. So that does kind of continue, although that is in a higher division. We move up to the Premier League, but then you're hoping that he's then surrounded by a bit of better players, and I guess that does develop over the next couple of seasons. His peak years, I've highlighted them as 2019 to 2023, and we can kind of look into that in a little bit more detail. But that's clearly his prime, isn't it? That's when he comes into his own.
Yeah, very much so. And it probably starts, I think we as a team really start to come into our own when Gerrard came in, and that's for me when Tav really stepped up a level as well. And Gerrard came in, a man who's great leadership qualities, been a fantastic captain for Liverpool for years, and making him that captain figure at Rangers Football Club was really maybe gave him that added responsibility, and that's maybe just pushed him up a ceiling as well. So I think that's when we're a lot more organised in Europe. We start to have European runs, going through group stages, qualifying from group stages, and that probably all came about in the Steven Gerrard era, where we definitely raised the bar and raised our levels considerable. So not really a surprise that Tavernier was part of that after being made captain when Gerrard came in.
Yeah, Ryan, it was Steven Gerrard that made Tavernier captain, and I think it does coincide, his improvement coincides with being able to play in Europe and having that experience.
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously quite a lot of things that Gerrard, did when he came into the club. Obviously, a lot of infrastructure changes, a lot of kind of, higher professional level of football, if you like. He brought his experiences from Liverpool, and he started to do things. There was wee things that were changing, like he made a kitchen next to the dressing room because he wanted the players to have the ability to eat lunch in the stadium, quite just before match days. We subtle changes like that. You probably find that sports science started to become a little bit bigger, bit better, bit more of the kind of fitness side of things. So it doesn't surprise me that Tavernier benefited from that. The captaincy thing, from what I remember at the time, was a little bit controversial. He wasn't a standout obvious replacement. I think Lee Wallace was actually still in the building at the time, and he was removed as the captain. It was obviously the infamous falling out with Kenny Miller, Lee Wallace and Warburton, I think it was at the time. Was it a game at Hampden or something like that, I remember? And
it'd be Murty, is it not, mate?
Was it Murty? Yeah, possibly. And Wallace eventually got removed as the captain, and there was a wee bit of kind of people were a bit upset about that. They obviously remember Wallace's sacrificing his football career to follow us down to the lower divisions and taking over the captaincy from Lee McCall, and Lee McCall retired and stuff. So there was a lot of credit in the bank for Lee Wallace at that point. And for him to be kind of removed as captain and James Tavernier to come in, ruffled a few feathers especially amongst the kind of more traditional supporters.
Graham, I don't disagree with Ryan there, but I felt it was more like future planning by making James Tavernier the captain. Not that he was a standout leader or anything, but he was going to be with us for a wee while and we could build a kind of captaincy around him.
Yeah, I think there's leadership comes in all different forms and styles. When you've got somebody with the aura of Steven Gerrard, like I said, who's captained a very good Liverpool team, won the Champions League, that's a player who's then became a manager who knows what he's looking for in terms of leadership qualities for his captain. So it's Tavernier's probably what we'd say is more a traditional Rangers captain. You don't see him as maybe vocal as people like Barry Ferguson or Richard Gough. He's maybe not got that aura around him, but he has obviously got leadership qualities and capabilities. And not only did Gerrard appoint him as that captain, there's many other great leaders that came after Gerrard that retained him as captain. Van Bronckhorst coming in, again, somebody who's played at a high level and been a captain himself, and then Barry Ferguson coming back in the club as manager and also retaining him as captain. So, Gerrard was the first one to identify and put in position, but there's been successive managers since then that have absolutely stood by that decision. So, like I said, I think his leadership style is obviously different. I think he's very influential in the dressing room, but he's just a different style of leader from maybe what we've been used to at the football club, and that's maybe what's not maybe got fans concerned, but maybe just made some fans and supporters unsure. But when you look at somebody like Gerrard, he knows what he's looking for when he's making a captain. We've got to trust that. That's what he's there for. That's what he's done in his career. So there's reasons why he's done it, and ultimately, I think that was the right thing. And the amount of years Tav's been here has shown that long-term planning was the right thing. It's just a shame recruitment-wise and other things didn't go well in that time as well for us to be successful as what we should have been.
Where he does improve, Ryan, over the course of the first 3 seasons at least, is he scores 1 goal in 2016-2017, then gets 8 the following year, and then by 2018-2019 he has 14 goals. So that's a side of him that improved. It can't all just be penalties, though. There was a couple of free kicks in there, and he was also very good at kind of getting to the back post.
Yeah, mate, just before I come on to that and answer your question there, I just lean on what Graham was saying there as far as the qualities of being the captain is concerned. I watched another podcast recently where Barry Ferguson was sitting with Tom Miller, and he said when he became the Rangers manager he did have his doubts over the qualities of James Tavernier as the Rangers captain, but he said he was blown away by his leadership qualities. And that's coming from one of the standout captains in Rangers history. Barry Ferguson played under Walter Smith. He's won a lot of trophies under Walter Smith, not just captain Rangers, but captain in Scotland as well. So that's, for me, it's a good thing to say. That's testament for me enough to say that's given in. And obviously, Gerrard, Liverpool captain, England captain, won the European Cup, knows what it takes to be a decent captain and represent a football club. Because Gerrard, by all accounts, was Liverpool. When you think about Liverpool, you think about Steven Gerrard. Even now, that's still the case. So the fact that these two individuals who have played football at the highest level, say the James Tavernier's got the credentials to be the Rangers captain, for me that's enough. But as far as his goals are concerned, I think it's just the tactics at the time, the way he finds himself at the back post. I think if you remember rightly, Ryan Kent was starting to become a bigger influence at the club at that point as well. I think that coincides with that. So Kent was very much, a lot of industry in the left-hand side, and that allowed, Tavernier to find himself in at the back post. I think you remember a couple where he was just finding them headers in at the back post and stuff, and obviously naturally becoming the penalty taker, while helping his goals in the amount of time that we do spend in the opposition box. And if I'm right in saying, I think that was around about the time the old cliche penalty to Rangers started to come in.
Just a wee reminder, Ryan, I just remind you, your contracts are obliged not to watch any other podcasts, so if we can cut that out, please.
I didn't mention what podcast it was, mate, so I think I'm all right.
I'm joking. Graham, can you just touch on because something that I look back on kind of fondly, his relationship with Candeas. People say he's never really kind of replicated that, and obviously we needed a better standard of quality of player ahead of him, but that was a good partnership they had.
It was a great balance, but just on Ryan's point, there was also times where Barisic, our left back, was putting crosses in, and Tavernier, the right back, was the one converting and scoring goals. So that's how flying our two fullbacks were in terms of that style of football. So it was incredible to see. But you're right, that partnership with Candeas and Tavernier was solid. I think they both had a good understanding of each other. I think Candias worked really hard at tracking back as well and supporting Tavernier from a defensive aspect as well. And we've probably not had that consistency in terms of that right wing position, probably until Czerny came in last year to play in the right. With several people try it just hasn't worked out. So, again, another aspect of our recruitment, we never got that position right. So yeah, that's where that definitely worked well with Tav, and you did see him slightly different because we didn't have that quality probably in that side of the pitch when Candias left.
Ryan, when we move into where he starts to get in, obviously he wins the first division, but well, Rangers won't really celebrate that too much. But we do in 2020, 2021 win the SPFL, and he is the player of the year for the SPFL. I'll go through some stats. He got 12 goals, 9 assists. Passing accuracy was good, 78%. Defensive duels won, slightly dropped to 68%, and his aerial duels, again, slightly dropped to 58%. But the fact that he was a big part in us winning the league, I think, sticks in the mind with people.
Yeah, we set all sorts of records that year as far as the defence is concerned. I think we only conceded something ridiculous like 16 goals all season or something like that. We had the record number of clean sheets in a row. It was basically shut out central. The amount of games that we won during that league campaign by the single goal, 1-0, was, the defence was absolutely fantastic. I think he just slightly pipped Goldson. I thought Goldson had a particularly good year that year as well. So it'd have been a toss-up between them two, but probably just Tavernier's goal contributions. Saying that, Goldson did score 2 at Parkhead, which I remember fondly, which was a good day. But I think he was the captain, the leader. He's the man with the silverware in his hand at the end of the season there. It was a great year all round for him. And I think just going back to talking about relationships that he had with certain players, I think if one that you probably actually need to witness in the flesh to appreciate it was his relationship with Ryan Jack. When Ryan Jack was fit and doing really well, Tavernier would have the ability to bomb forward, and Ryan Jack just seamlessly just back and cover over that side, and Jack would fill in it right back for him. He would just go over and just if the ball was lost, he would go over and just get the ball and recover it well. And it was something you probably don't actually realise you're seeing it until you're watching it in the flesh, because sometimes when you're watching things on the TV, these things don't become apparent, but you would see Tavernier bombing forward, and without even being asked, Ryan Jack would just follow it across and cover his yards for him. It was great to see, but fortunately Jack couldn't keep himself fit for one reason or another, so that relationship maybe didn't get as far along down the road as it possibly could have done.
And Graham, I'll let you comment on the league win, but yeah, I was going to mention the kind of covering role that Ryan Jack used to do. I never liked the two holding midfielders, but there certainly was there so Tavernier could get forward.
I think that was just part of the system as well, because we played more of a flat 3, and then our two, we didn't have the wingers so much. It was 2 number 10s and a bit narrower, so that whole formation did work really well for us. And I think Jack played a few games at right back at certain times too, so he did understand the positioning aspect. But again, that was the system worked, and it's again about getting the system to work with the players that you got. And to me, that was a great example of Gerrard doing that. We got the system right, we got the personnel right, and people started to flourish in their positions, and that's how you build a successful team.
Moving into the next season, 2021-2022, we do win the Scottish Cup, and we also win. We also get to the Europa League final. Obviously, an incredible season, Ryan. I remember his goals against Leipzig. I remember his performances throughout Europe. He played 3,320 minutes that season, and this to me is they 2 seasons are peak James Tavernier for me.
Yeah, mate. And listen, the season that we got to the Europa League final, the appreciation of football was brought back. Obviously we'd lost the ability to go to the stadium during the COVID times and stuff, so your appreciation of actually going to be able to take in a match, was never higher. I was lucky enough. I was in Dortmund, I was in Braga, I was in Leipzig. I was at the final as well, and I witnessed some incredible nights that I'll take to my grave. Tavernier's performance, particularly over the 2 legs and against Dortmund, he was great. The penalties that he scored, the responsibility that he took in serious moments. He's obviously got the goal in the first couple of minutes against Braga as well. And tell me the next time a right back's going to finish the top goal scorer in the competition at any point in the future. So it was fantastic, and he's obviously caught the eye all over Europe that year. Incredible. But we fell short at the end of it. He stepped up in the final, and he's got us on our way in what could have been a memorable couple of moments for us. And it's sad to hear. I've never watched the game back. I never will watch the game back. Breaks my heart. I still think about it sometimes, but it was some real special memories, and he was very much at the heart of it.
I've never watched any of those games back, including the one with Walter's final, and certainly would never name a suite after it at the stadium, that's for sure. Graham, that summer, actually, I was expecting James Tavernier to move on purely for just how well he'd done in the Europa League.
Yeah, very much so, because I think he definitely caught the eye. The goals he scored during that against real quality opposition as well. We need to remember that. It was real quality opposition that we came up against throughout that campaign. And Tavernier was, as good as you've seen him in a Rangers jersey through that campaign. So I think what we've not been great at as a club is selling players at their peak or when the right time is to sell. We're going to need to get better at that. Would it have been right to sell them? Probably at that time. I think we'd have made good money from that. But would have trusted the club at that time to bring in the right players behind them? Probably not at that point. So, he stayed with us. And actually, I think that's really helping me certain times, especially this season, the position we're in. His leadership and his experience of being there and done it with the football club will really help us for this run in. And I think we still got a lot of, this side isn't finished just from that window. We've got another few tough windows to come, and I think I'd like to see him remain for the next few windows anyway, and at least get another year out of him, because I think that stability and that experience that he brings is invaluable when you look at the rest of the squad that we've got. We're kind of missing that.
Graham, moving into the following season, this is where I started to suspect there was a decline, because at the beginning of that season under Van Bronckhorst, it looked like he was noticeably slower. Either he was injured or he was just the season before was too much for him and then took far too much out of him. But actually looking at his stats, he improved on that season in 22-23. Is that a surprise to you? I can read a couple to you, but is it a surprise that he actually got better stats that year?
I think it's interesting. Stats tell you some part of a story. You see a different aspect when you're at games. I think the whole team seemed really sluggish. We looked unfit. It was a real struggle for us. But what I remember that year is the amount of time we relied on his goals. We relied on him to deliver. He dug us out of many of a tricky situation. So yeah, it's interesting that his stats continue to go up that way, because I've got a similar memory to yours in terms of how we looked as a team. It is quite a surprise, but I do recall him digging us out a few difficult situations and scoring some important goals that kept us in games and got us to win games. So, it's actually quite interesting when you go back and read the stats in detail, just how much he's done over these years. I think it's easy to forget. You maybe take it for granted, but seeing it all again and getting through the stats just shows you what an important player he was and where we would have been without him. It was tough going at certain times in these seasons. Where would we have been if Tavernier wasn't there?
I've wondered, Doug, I know you're watching, Doug, if you could just possibly confirm for me if these stats are just for the league. It's not majorly important, but I just feel like he scored more goals than this. But anyway, Ryan, in the 2022-2023 season, he scores 16 goals and gets 7 assists. Where he is very good still is his passing accuracy up at 82% as well. So again, I thought there was a drop-off. He played 3,617 minutes. He's still a machine at this point.
Yeah, and I think probably the term machine is a real good way to kind of, not just this season, but all his season in his career. I couldn't tell you games that he's missed. I think maybe you could count in one hand over the 10 years how many games he's actually missed through injury. So, the way that he must conduct himself and looking after himself out with the park, his preparation of games, the way he comes away from games and stuff like that, the relaxation's part of his life and stuff, he must really take care of himself to manage to get that kind of level of durability on that. So I don't know how I feel about the 22-23 season. It was an odd one. I was sad to see Van Bronckhorst go that year. There was obviously rumours that they'd fallen out with Van Bronckhorst at pre-season, that I think they'd been away to Portugal. There was that game that the floodlights failed about the 70th minute or something, and the boys had asked to go for a night out and they were refused the night out, and I think they all kind of fell out with Gio and his staff in the back of it. So you'd like to think your captain would hold the boys together in the dressing room if something like that does happen, lead by example, but these are obviously rumours. The passing accuracy doesn't surprise me. When Beale's came in, you're leaving a Dutch manager and coming into a guy who's obviously very football minded, so the passing accuracy wouldn't surprise me at all with that. Overall, in terms of what the team did that year, you actually look at it, the way the team finished there, I think they finished 92 or 93 points that year. We can't achieve 92 or 93 points this year. I think the most we can get to is about 90. So any other season, that could actually be another championship winning season that year. It just couldn't simply beat Celtic. And I think it was when Postecoglou first came in and his incredible football style and the force that he built the opposition up to, it was very difficult to do that. But in any other season, Tavernier could have been sitting there with another trophy in his hand.
No, you're right. Disappointing what happened with Van Bronckhorst. Obviously quite disappointing in Europe as well to perform in the Champions League as badly as that. But I guess there was mitigating circumstances for that too. Injuries to Connor Goldson, I think, helped hindered us that season as well. I think we won each with Liverpool, and then Goldson goes off at half time, and all of a sudden they score 5 or whatever in the second half. So
we were actually 1-0 up at half time, mate.
Was it just 1-0? Yeah.
We went up at half time, and we know what happened after that.
But in that time frame, I think I've suggested that that's where I've started to notice a decline. You kind of agreed with that as well. But as we go on another season, the decline isn't there in the stats. And I know you're saying the stats tell you one thing and tell you, your eyes tell you something else, but he plays 3,794 minutes the following season, 23-24. His progressive passes and accuracy is up. His passing accuracy is really kind of similar, but around about 80%. Duels won 70%. And recoveries 10.8. Now these don't mean anything, but they're all improvements on the year before. So the decline that we think we're seeing, is it maybe to do with his athleticism not being the same as it was, and he's maybe get his football brains actually taken over?
I think the decline was within us as a team. I don't think our team was as strong that season. I think that's the season where we didn't invest and we should have invested, and loads of other different things that we should have done recruitment-wise, but I don't think we improved the way we should have. And what you're probably seeing is Tavernier becomes more important, and when he's maybe not surrounded with as many good players, he's having to do more. He's having to do more of these recoveries. He's scoring more goals. He's creating more assists, because he's the one we looked for when we've not had that quality around the rest of the park. So, that's probably sums up where I feel in terms of that. We've probably not recruited well when we've got somebody like Tavernier in there, captain the team, always present, always there, very rarely injured. And he's having to do more because he's probably one of the more quality player that we've got at that point, as opposed to having other quality around the park. So there's probably a little bit of that, Billy, in my opinion.
I've compared the kind of three sides to James Tavernier, Ryan, the kind of young James Tavernier, the peak James Tavernier, and the James Tavernier the last maybe 2 seasons. And there is a decline. There is a decline in the stats over a few areas. Ball carrying, not as good as he was, and that's massive for obviously a club like Rangers. His defensive duels, well, it was peak in the 9s and plus. Now he's down at 6.5. So he's engaging less in the kind of recovery work. And his crossing volume down to about 2 to 3 decent crosses a match. It used to be 5 to 7. So there is areas of decline. I'm not imagining it.
No, I mean, he's not going to be able to escape Father Time. Let's be honest. His ability to get up and down the park and be that flying fullback is going to diminish, as he gets older and such. And there's nobody that can't do this. You remember Ryan Giggs back in the day was that flying left winger. He ended up finding himself into a centre midfielder. Paolo Maldini was a left back. He ended up becoming a left centre half. So it's not without question that this is going to happen to him. Where we've kind of maybe let him down as a players and individuals, that we haven't given him any competition to replace him. Sean Sterling has shown signs that he has the ability, in a footballing sense, to replace him, but he can't give you more than half a dozen games before he gets injured again. And for one reason or another, he's never been replaced. Anyone who's actually ever come in to compete with him has disappeared. So it doesn't surprise me, these things as well. And I think, being honest, my head tells me that you maybe want to give him another deal, because it's going to be a big turnover of players in the defence in the summer, from what we can see with sort of being out of contract and a lot of loan players and stuff. So do you kind of keep the stability and do you give him another deal? my heart tells me if he wins the trophy at the end of the season, if we get a touch wood, a League and Scottish Cup double, you sail him out into the sunset with the trophy in his hands and you thank him for his time and his service, and he leaves in the club in a high, with everyone's best wishes, mostly apart from Curry. So that's where I would see it. You see what's happened the last kind of couple of weeks is you can see with Ant-Man switching over to the left-hand side, and the early signs that Tua Romans is coming in and being that kind of overlapping fullback on the left-hand side. If we can create that on the right-hand side, what an unbelievable force we could be. So it's goals coming and pulling player, and oppositions won't know where to look. They'll be looking all over their shoulders. Are they going to come down that side attack? Is they come there? And truth be told, James Tavernier doesn't have that in his locker anymore. So for me, it's got to be on the menu for the summer and on the shopping list for the summer that we've got to go and get that overlapping fullback on the right-hand side, and especially if we take up the option to sign Scott Wilson a permanent deal.
Graham, I think that's a couple of really good points with Ryan there, that we've never signed anyone that could take over that, which shows, that it's not there's not been other players that have been decent right backs, they've just not been as good as him.
Yeah, he's absolutely spot on, Ryan. We have not brought somebody in who can hit the levels that Tavernier has done. We just haven't done it. Sterling, was that in a slight attempt? I'm not sure, but when we look at what the players that we're now bringing in the left back, which is brought in, it shows we can go out and find the players. We've got that network, we've got the ability to go and bring players in. I agree, we're going to need to do that in terms of that right back position. But there's going to be a lot of change as well in the summer. So we've got 2 centre backs currently with us on loan. We've got a left back with us on loan. You've got Max Aarons on loan. So there's four of the defence that we've got going to go back to parent clubs. I would absolutely keep Tavernier in no matter what happens this season. Let's say he's been there, he's done it, he's won trophies with Rangers, he's won the league with Rangers. He's got that leadership. Now, everybody who's managed Rangers talks about Tavernier's leadership qualities. I still think there's a place for that in and around the football club. I would like us to bring in a right back who can absolutely compete with them and possibly be a starter ahead of him. But I think having him around the club and around the building will only be a good thing for us. And we don't have enough of that leadership. I think that's one of the things we've said right throughout the season. We've not got leaders on the park. We've not got a lot of leadership within the group. So to then let Tavernier leave when we know we're struggling with that seems counterproductive in my opinion. So I think you're absolutely right. We need to improve our right back position, go and bring a quality player in that can go and compete with them. But I still feel there's a roll up in the football club, and I still feel if we give him minutes, he won't let us down next season.
Let me point out a few areas, Ryan, where the stats don't say that he's in decline. So his passing quality right now is between 82 and 83%. That's the highest of his career. But again, there could be mitigating circumstances for that. His passing skills are still elite. Still 12 forward passes per 90 minutes. Sorry, I've forgotten the term. His goal output is better than it's ever been. His defensive duels is still around 60 to 70% that he wins. Yes, he is a bit slower, but he's smarter, and I don't necessarily think what I was expecting to see in these stats was a major drop off these last 2 seasons, and fortunately for us, it's not actually there.
Well, the passing's got to be good, because if he's staying in his own half more and he's staying in a more of a defensive area, more the passing actually has to be good. He can't take the chance, because if he takes too many chances and he loses the ball in the area he's playing in, he's going to put us under a lot of pressure and possibly loses goals. So the passing actually has to go up. The duels are probably going to go up as well, because he's probably going to be going into those duels in a position of favour where he's actually going to be approaching, rather than actually chasing, because if he's doing the recovery side of things, you'd like to think the opposition players probably get the advantage on it, because he's got to make the yards up. So it's a different one. The stats in that respect don't surprise me at all. But questions for you both, just to add something in here. We're obviously talking about the need to replace him and give a higher quality right back. But who within the current squad could potentially replace him as captain? Because for me, that's just as important as replacing him as a captain, as well as obviously a right back as well. Is there anyone in the squad that you guys would think you'd have your eye on for it?
If I come to me first, I would say Butland. I don't like the goalkeeper being the captain, and John Souttar. I don't think I want him to be here after this. So they're the kind of 2 standout ones. No, Ryan, I want us to go and sign a captain. When's the last time we've done that?
Okay.
For me, I think Raskin could do it if he's there next year. I quite liked him when he was given the armband. Was it last season? And I thought it brought out more in terms of that. When you give that player the captain's armband, that responsibility goes up. And I thought Raskin absolutely, took to it absolutely brilliantly. I thought his performances increased as well. He was a captain who would be in the ear of the referee. And again, that's something that we've not really seen from Tavernier, and I quite like that about him. So if we've got Raskin here next season, I quite like the idea of a captain in the middle of the park. For me, that was who I would like to see have the armband, because I think he's got leadership qualities. He's a very good player. But again, whether he's here next summer after World Cup, that's another question entirely.
I'm not so sure he will be. I think he probably wants to move on himself, and the World Cup's a good opportunity for us to maybe get some decent money for him. Ryan, looking at the stats, I made a wee note at the end here that if we had done a scouting video on some 24-year-old that maybe played for another team in the Premier League with these stats, we'd be crying out to sign him, but we're still having a debate whether he's should give him another year or not.
Very strange one, that, isn't it? I think it's, unfortunately, there'll be a lot of people that within our support will always remember James Tavernier as the captain that's seen Celtic win more trophies than anyone else. And I think he can't escape that. But we've obviously got to remember as well that he's obviously the captain that brought us our league trophy back after how many years we didn't have it. And, I think we need to be thankful of what's happened, because there was days not so long ago we didn't think we were going to have a football club to win trophies again. So I think we've got to kind of maybe appreciate how far we've come. And yes, maybe there'll be certain opportunities where the board haven't invested money and certain things haven't been great for us, but we're still here now and we're still fighting. And we will get that torch back at some point. And I think in years to come, when our grandkids ask us, who was this Tavernier guy that seemed to score all the goals? I'm looking back in statistics, I'm looking back in there. He scored so many goals. I don't think there'll be very many of us will turn around and say, oh, he was rubbish. He was the guy that lost us all the goals. He was the guy that seen them win all the trophies and stuff. I think we'll have wonder memories of him, and we'll have bad memories, if you like.
Well, I think we know one person that might have not quite so fond memories of him. I don't know if he's still in the comments, but can he say hello if you want? Graham, I guess we'll wrap things up. We're nearly going 50 minutes now anyway, but there's the idea of him having a testimonial. If he wins the League and Cup double and gets a testimonial and sails off into the sunset, I think he does. Well, he already is in the kind of Hall of Fame, but he does cement himself as a legend of the club, I think.
Yeah, he's. I
realise that's a big if, by the way.
Yeah, indeed. Ultimately, I think we, in terms of when Tavernier's been here in the captain of the club, it's not been a great era for the football club. I think when we look at some of our recruitment and how we've went about business, we've not really helped James Tavernier. We've not helped the squad. We've not been as competitive as what we should have been. We've not won as many trophies as we should have been. We've went through quite a few managers as well. So all that tells a story that we've not got things right. But despite all that chaos, Tavernier's been a real consistent for us in terms of his performance. We've seen some of his stats. We've talked about them, his goals, his assists, what he's delivered for us. I think if he wins the league and we get a cup and he's a double winning captain, that really does cement him in terms of being a solid Rangers captain. He's experienced some success. But again, I'm still nervous about saying sail into the sunset when we've not got the leadership around the club just now. So yeah, it's just unfortunate he played with us in that era where he has played with us. Had we been successful and really kicked on, even from when Gerrard won the league and then put the right investment in the club and the players on the pitch, it could have been a total different story for James Tavernier. He might have been remembered for nothing but success. So it's unfortunate he's played from us when he did.
And I just say one more thing on him.
Aye, mate, of course, yeah.
One thing I would say is as well, he could never be accused of stealing a wage office. And I don't think everyone, it's in the recent time that we could say that about. There's been plenty of players that have come up here and signed big contracts and not contributed at all and sat on the bench and, questionable injury concerns and stuff like that. We can never turn around and say James Tavernier hasn't earned his wages at Rangers Football Club.
No, I agree with that, mate. Let me just ask you a question. Right now, if there was tickets to go to his testimonial, would you go?
I'd like to go. He's a Leeds fan as a boy. There's obviously that affiliation now with Leeds. I'd love to see Rangers play at Ellen Road again. That would be fantastic. I'd definitely go to that if there was an opportunity.
I've not got a great experience. I went to Elland Road once and it was a 0-0 draw with Chelsea. It was the most boring game of football I've ever watched. But you were allowed to have a drink in the concourse back then, which was quite a novelty for a Scottish fan. Graham, same question to you. If it was right now, would you go?
I would go, and I'd take my two boys as well because they're big Tavernier fans. I've got Tavernier in the back of the shirt, and I think he deserves the send-off for the service he's given us. Faultless service in terms of his effort. Everyone Ryan said around he's definitely not stole a wage. He's been a real constant. His leadership has been impressive. Yes, he's made some mistakes. He's got things wrong, but the way he's served the club the past 10 years, and I've seen somebody in the comments, they're absolutely right. Tav was not the reason we didn't win trophies. There's more reasons than that. It wasn't just 11 on the park. There was other things behind the scenes. But from the way he served us, I'll absolutely be going.
Well, I do agree with what he was saying. He does get the blame for decisions that other people made off the park a lot of the time. But I mean, there's frailties in his game, but it is a different game. We're thinking of a right back being more defensive minded, where in modern football they're more attacking minded. But anyways, it was good to have a discussion over these stats, Ryan. I was surprised with the way they kind of fell, or the way, not fell, but the way the stats actually show that the fall off isn't quite as dramatic as maybe us fans think. But thanks for coming on board this evening, mate.
No, listen, no problem at all, mate. Thanks for having me. Hopefully, as we say at the end of the season, he's got something to celebrate. He's got a smile in his hand and silver a smile in his face and silver in his hand.
Yeah, thanks, mate. And Graham, thanks as well, mate.
Yeah, thanks very much. Still agree. We'll all be smiling if we hit that league and cup double. We'll all be smiling for the full summer, I would suggest.
I would say so. And thank you very much for everyone that's watching. Thank you for the comments we get at the side. We do read them and try to put them on the screen if they're relevant to what we're talking about. But thank you again for watching. Just leaves me to say every night is a Rangers Journal night, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Every night is the Rangers Journal night.